All right, just to get the 2013 season going here, we're going to talk a little bit about the new targeting and initiating with the crown of the helmet rules. Obviously, the rule itself is unchanged, and I think that's important for the since 2008 when targeting and initiating with the crown came into effect as player safety rules changes. What we have coming up in 13 is no change whatsoever to the statement of the fouls. What we do have, though, is a mandatory disqualification of the player. So we're going to talk about these two little rules a little bit here and put some video in there. I think it's important to note that this sentence that's on the screen now, when in question, it is a foul. And that's because the Rules Committee, American Football Coaches Association, and others involved in the development of these rules realize that at real time, full speed, the official on the field gets one look at the play, and as a result, sometimes we may err. And the theory here is let's err on the side of safety. So that's why we have this language that appears right here. When in question, it is a foul. So it's important to note when we talk a little bit later about some of these plays. Also, I think we'll just run one here and show you the very play we're trying to get out of the game. And as this play hits, you come back, and I'll show you again in slow-mo. Take a look at this player who comes in here. There's a ball carrier. He's not a defenseless player, and we'll make that clear in a few minutes. But when he comes in, right here you see him starting to lower his head, which he does, and as he lowers his head, he makes that direct helmet contact there. That's the play that the Rules Committee is trying to get out of the game, and in doing so, they've expanded the penalty. Not only should this be a foul, but there will be a disqualification and ejection of the player as a result. You have another view of it here. Whoops, I'm sorry, I guess we don't. I just want to come back one more time and make sure we're clear that this is initiating with the crown of the helmet. When the player drops his head like this, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the new language that's in there. Right at this point here, he's dropped his head, and now he ends up making that contact right there. That's the play that I think all of us collectively want to see removed from the game. So let's talk a little bit. Like I said, there's no change in the rule from 2008. However, beginning in 2013, there will be ejection from the game as a part of the penalty. Now, we'll talk a little later about how replay can come in and correct a part of this. But if the ejection disqualification happens in the first half of the game, the player's out for the remainder of that game. If it happens in the second half, what we have is the player is out for the first half of the following game. So in both cases here, it's a pretty severe penalty, and we want to talk about the role that we'll play. Here's one. It's not real good footage, but what you have here is a high hit on the quarterback that happens late. You can see the defender coming in. The ball's already gone. It's all the way up here. And the difference between roughing the passer or targeting a defenseless player above the shoulders. And in this case here, and again, it's just not real good footage, but I put the point in to say on some of these, we may have options for other fouls, such as unnecessary roughness. And here you see, again, at the very end of the play, the defensive player leaps up and makes contact with the quarterback above the shoulders, and he is one of the defenseless players, which we'll enumerate. Let's talk about it. Who are these defenseless players? Well, there's 9 of them that are defined in the rule. The first 6 are no different than they've been since the rule started. A player in the act of passing or having just passed the ball, like the one I just showed you. A receiver attempting to catch a pass and prior to becoming a runner. In other words, his concentration and focus is still on receiving the pass and before he comes to the ground and now reestablishes himself as a runner. Third one, the kicker, who's in the act of kicking or having just kicked the ball. But then we also add this language this year, and also during the kick and subsequent return. So he also remains a defenseless player. And again, we're defining those players that you cannot target above the shoulders. The next group, a returner attempting to catch or recover a kick. And there have been some changes in that in recent years to help protect that player. Any player who's on the ground is considered a defenseless player. And number 6, a player obviously out of the play. Now here's where the changes take place for this year. We've added 3 more categories of defenseless player. This is the first one, a player who receives a blindside block. and we'll put together some footage of this later on for our study after spring practice this year and during the summer and getting ready for the clinic and for the next season. But that's an important addition of definition of a defenseless player. Number 8, a ball carrier who is in the grasp of a tackler, or the language we also add to that, or whose forward progress has been stopped. So that's an addition for a defenseless player. None of these were there last year. And lastly, the 9th one, the quarterback, anytime after a change of possession. Throw on an interception and a return, any play like that, the quarterback is covered. So those are the definitions of defenseless players. Knowing who those defenseless players are, now let's take a look at some of these plays here. And again, I think it's important to remember the two terms. Targeting means that you hit one of those 9 identified defenseless players above the shoulders. And it doesn't matter what you hit them with. It can be with the helmet, the hand, the elbow, the shoulder, the forearm. You cannot target one of those defenseless players above the shoulders. Initiating with the crown, a little different. That means you cannot use the crown, the top of the helmet, to initiate contact with the opponent anywhere. It doesn't have to be above the shoulders. You can't use the crown to hit him in the back, the chest, the arm, anywhere. You cannot lead with the crown of the helmet. So let's look at some of these and talk about it. This first one happens here. It happens pretty quick, and you look at it and you think, well, it really didn't look like much. It happens right out of bounds here. But when we take a look at the next view, I think you'll get a little bit better idea of what these. Not a defenseless player. He's a runner. But now look at this player coming in here. Does he drop his head and, in this point, makes that contact with the crown of his helmet? Not much there, and maybe that would be a little ticky-tack to make. But again, if that is called, and the question is going to be, does he get his shoulder pad first, or does he get him in the head? But more importantly, does he use the crown of the helmet? And that's the distinguishing factor for us as officials, same way for coaches and players. We want to not get that crown of the helmet in use. Again, not a defenseless player, but does he initiate with the crown of the helmet? And that's how close these will be. Now let's talk about some language that's been introduced this year to help, I think, everybody, coaches, players, officials, announcers, fans, everybody, to understand some of this key language. Let's talk about the first one, launching. We hear that term. What are we talking about in football terms when we talk about launching? This is a player leaving his feet to attack an opponent by an upward and forward thrust of the body to make contact in the head or neck area. Now, that launching means that the player leaves his feet. So launching in almost all cases will require leaving the feet. Another term that you'll hear us talk about, the second one, a crouch. A crouch followed by an upward and forward thrust to attack with contact at the head or neck area, even though one or both feet are still on the ground. So these two are kind of covering the launching type area, but this one allows if one or both feet are still on the ground. The third one, leading with the helmet, forearm, fist, hand, or elbow to attack with contact at the head or neck area. So we talk about these other body parts that can be used as a part of the targeting foul. It doesn't have to always be the helmet. And of course, we try and avoid the language of the term helmet to helmet, because many times it does not involve a true helmet to helmet. And lastly, lowering the head before attacking and initiating with the crown. So I think this is some of the language that's been added this year to help all of us get a better idea. Now, here's the one catch. You heard me speak earlier about the fact that these fouls, when in question, they're fouls. The official on the field has to make a real-time, full-speed, one-look-at-a-play decision, and if he throws the flag for initiating with the crown of the helmet or targeting a defenseless player, there is now the automatic disqualification from the game. However, what we're going to do at the FBS level, because we have instant replay, those plays will automatically be reviewed in every instance when that disqualification occurs to see if the official did err. So if the official errs and we find that that really wasn't above the shoulders or it was not with the crown, the foul will stand because of the when in question part of the rule. That's just a fact that we have to live with. Fortunately, there are not a lot of these. There's 6 or 8 or so every year. But before that replay official can look at it and reverse that, there's some key terms I think we need to make sure we're clear on. One is the evidence he's looking at must be indisputable. That doesn't mean it looks like, I think it is, it could be, it might be, I think it is. None of that applies. Indisputable. And here's the other one, beyond all doubt. So with those two key areas, before we can rise to the level of a reversal, this is a very high standard that's set in these plays before replay can become involved. And we'll be working on this throughout the year. All right, let's go to some of these plays and take a look. Here's one coming across the middle. You see the initial hit there. I'll wait till we go to the second view and you'll see a little bit better idea. Now, here's a defenseless player because he's a receiver in the act of catching the ball, and he has not established himself as a runner, and now we see this action coming in right in here. So, is he a defenseless player? Yes, but does he get hit above the shoulders? No. So now the question is it initiating with the crown of the helmet? And in real time, you look at this, and you see, boy, he separates him good from the ball. This contact comes in there. Are we talking about with the crown of the helmet? Again, when in question, the answer is yes. When in question, it's a foul. So even though he's a defenseless player, that's not what the foul is, because he doesn't get hit above the shoulders. But when you lower your head and go back to that language we talked about earlier, and you lead with that crown of that helmet in there, when in question, that's going to be a foul. So that would be a foul. And now the replay official has to come in and determine, is this sufficient evidence that he got him with the front of the helmet rather than the crown to be able to say, all right, the foul will stand because of the when in question that the official has to call, but now I'm going to allow him to stay in the game because I think it's with the front of the helmet. And sometimes video isn't going to give us the answer. Indisputable and beyond all doubt, again, are the criteria. Very, very tough plays, and we want to work extremely hard in the off season to prepare to get these right. Here's a launching up the sideline. You can see when this play occurs, there's a defenseless player in the air. He's a receiver going up for the ball. Now take a look right here at the feet. The language we talked about, crouch or launching. And we see the defender here leave his feet. And at this point, he's airborne and his feet are completely off the ground. It's in an upward thrust directed at a player. Now, if he gets him above the shoulders, then we have a foul. And in this case, we do. I think we have another view of it here. Here's probably the next one, launching, leaving the ground. And you take a look at the helmet. Just take a look at the helmet of the receiver right here. And you can see where that initial contact gets him right up under the chin strap there. And look at the movement of the helmet. And you see right there. And that's how tough these are. Don't get me wrong. Nobody's trying to make any of these as simple, easy plays. They're not always that straightforward. But in this case here, when in question, it's a foul. So when in question, we do happen to flag this particular play with the launching. It's against a defenseless player. Now, replay's job when they come in is going to have to determine if we eject this player, as the rule requires, is there any evidence we have here, indisputable, beyond all doubt, that will allow us to reverse that and let the player stay in the game. Some very tough situations. There's another view here. I think this is probably the best view right here. You can see as he launches upward with the crown of the helmet, and right there gets the face mask. So I think in that particular view right there, that would be a correct call, and the ejection would also result. All right, here's another one, launching. We want to talk again about the player. Now we see again, we talk about leaving the feet. Feet leaving the ground and launches upward. This is a defenseless player because he's a receiver who is in the act of catching the ball, and before he has a chance to protect himself and become a runner, he's still in that act. Here's where it comes in. If you'll take a look, you see the launching. One foot may be on the ground, and that's why we have that crouch position in there. But as he raises up, launches in an upward thrusting motion to make the contact. We have another view here. This is probably a little bit better view, and you can see here where the initial contact, again, a little bit obscured from this view. When in question, it's a foul. If he's ejected, is replay going to be able to reverse that ejection and disqualification from this view? Probably not. When in question, from replay, the play on the field stands. Now here's another view here. This is a little bit better view, and we're hoping. But in this one right here, it looks like he gets him with the shoulder, but it's above the shoulders. Hence, it is a foul. It is targeting. Doesn't matter what you hit a defenseless player with if it's above the shoulders. Arm, fist, elbow, shoulder. So this is the difficulty of these type of plays that we're trying to get out of the game, both from coaching, playing, and officiating. All three of us have responsibilities in doing this. This next one right here, it's not a real good view. It was called, we ruled it as a correct call. You'll see it over here. But when it pops up, this is with the shoulder. And I'll try and slow it down enough for you to see. And here is the receiver, again, defenseless player in the act of trying to catch the ball. The defender comes in here with the shoulder. If he gets him above the shoulders, which he does here, that's a foul, targeting a defenseless player in the head or neck area. And it doesn't have to be with the helmet. So, again, this language and descriptions of these various plays. Now, here's one that is not going to be targeting. Clearly, he's kind of a defenseless player. The ball is overthrown, but he doesn't hit him above the shoulders. It's a cheap shot, I think, and as a result, it's a foul, but it would be for unsportsmanlike rather than the ejection foul of target. Here's the best view of it. Clearly overthrown, comes in and gives him that kind of maybe unnecessary shot. The ball's already hit the ground and bounced beyond that. So, is that targeting? No, it's not. He might have been a defenseless player at one time, but this is not targeting, hence there would not be an ejection. This is an unsportsmanlike, and we'll talk further on during the year as we prepare and plan to try and understand these various types of plays. Here's one that occurs out of bounds here. Take a look at this. Again, not a defenseless player. He's a ball carrier. He's a runner. So now as he goes out of bounds, take a look at number 23 who comes in here. And as we take a look at 23, he comes in, lowers his head. Take a look at the helmet of the running back. Take a look at what happens to the helmet of the running back. He gets hit. But again, not defenseless, but it's because the defender lowers the crown of the helmet. We have another view of it, but I'm just trying to make sure we're clear on distinguishing what the two different terms that we're talking about here. I think we have one more view that will probably give you a little bit better idea. Here, this is probably the best view right here. Not a defenseless player. Now he's out of bounds, but take a look at this contact here, the crown of the helmet, and you can see right in here when we come in, we're talking about this part of the helmet, and as a result, that initial blow, it happens to be in the helmet, but with initiating with the crown, it could be a late hit out of bounds here too. There's some other things that are going on, but this is the part that the rule deals with now that I think is so severe and serious because it relates to the automatic mandatory disqualification. So here's another one. Now this is a really tough one. We have this with a quarterback. Play breaks down, he scrambles up here, and as a result gets hit. But as he's not a defenseless player. Now, he's not one of those 9 named defenseless players. He's another runner. But when he comes in here, the defender hits him pretty hard. Yes, the helmets do contact. That in and of itself is not always a foul. He's not initiating with a crown. There's no question. We can see the crown up here. He's not initiating with that. And he's not a defenseless player. So even though this is an ugly looking play, unfortunately the quarterback is injured on that, this does not meet the requirements of targeting or initiating in either case. We have a couple views of it, but this is where we have to be extremely vigilant and make sure that we understand this rule. Just because there's big hits and big contacts doesn't necessarily mean that it's a foul. In this case here, it's not a foul. You have a couple views of it, but we'll have to be to work real hard to make sure we understand. Here's probably the best view. Even though, again, if the helmet's contact, not a problem. Is it with the crown? Probably not. Maybe more with the shoulder. And I think that we have one more view here I'll show you that may give you, yeah, here's probably the next view here. He turns and gets him with the shoulder. We're not good enough to split hairs on stuff like that, nor do we want that called. So I think this is the kind of play that's going to distinguish those officials and players and coaches all trying to get on the same page about the rule. That's not a foul in that particular case. Now here's one you see clearly lowers his head. That's a foul. You'll get another view of it, and you'll see right here. This is the play that they want out of the game. Now take a look at the player right here coming. Not a defenseless player. He's become a runner. He's okay. And now at this point, it's this dipping of the head right here, this last component. Everything's good right here, but now when you lower that head, here's where you've changed this. This is now initiating with the crown of the helmet, and it's that last component of it right there that creates the foul. And in this case, it's a foul and will be an ejection in 2013. Another view of it here from the side, but I just think you see again, it's that last dipping of the head right there that creates it. Doesn't matter where he hits him. Doesn't have to be in the head, although he does in this particular case. Another view of it right there. All right, play 12 coming up here. Here's one. Back comes out into the back field here, and the defender comes up and closes him. But take a look what happens here. You look at it at first view, you're not real sure. It happens pretty quick. He is a defenseless player because he's just in the act of catching this ball. And if you take a look right here, he's just got the ball. His feet haven't even really come to the ground yet. And now, do we, as a defenseless player, do we hit him above the shoulders? And if you take a look here, I think you'll see that that initial blow doesn't have to be with the helmet, but it is above the shoulders. And I think the best view, if I really slow it down for you here, you'll see the movement of the receiver's helmet. And when you see that initial contact right there, I think that's the video evidence that supports this as a correct call for targeting a defenseless player. You have another view of it here. Now the defender's helmet comes off. He would have had to left the game anyway, but under this year's rule, he'll leave the game as a DQ. So take a look one more time and see if we can distinguish anything more on it. But that's the play. Again, very tough. Now, one of the newly defined defenseless players is a player, and if you recall, I read the language, a ball carrier already in the grasp of an opponent and whose forward progress has been stopped. Now, here's one very close to that. I'm not going to say this is exactly. He clearly is in the grasp here, and I think his forward progress has stopped, so he might qualify. But at this point, player comes in with the shoulder, drops his shoulder, and delivers a blow above the head. I have another view of this one here, and you might be able to get the idea. I put it on here more to demonstrate what this new definition of a defenseless player is. Doesn't have to get him, although I think he may get him with the helmet. I mean, it's very close right here to the contact with the helmet. But with that having been said, even if it's with a shoulder, forearm, elbow, or anything else, he would now qualify as a defenseless player. And would this be a foul? I think under last year's rule, it probably was not because he was a runner. I don't think he leads with the crown. He turns to the side. But the fact that it's above the shoulders this year is going to make this a foul. Here's one more view of it here. It gets obscured at the very end, kind of hard to tell, but one of the new definitions of defenseless players. All right, launching again. I think this is this is one that I had earlier. This is just a repeat of an earlier play, but we talk about launching again. The idea of leaving upward motion and get him in the head. Yeah, I've got that one on there twice. That's what we call user error when I duplicated it, but at least you get to look at it a second time. Talk about launching. All right, play 15. Let's talk about this one. Ball's thrown. You see the contact. Can't really tell much from that view right there, but here's a view that you can. Is he a defenseless player? Yes. He's a receiver. His concentration and focus is on catching the ball, and before he has a chance to defend himself, he gets hit up high. Is it targeting? Well, the goalpost gets in our way right there. We're not real sure, but the idea is I think we have another look at one. Here's probably a little bit better one, and when you take a look at this one, is he in a crouch position, upward thrust? Does he get him in the body first? I think there's a pretty good argument here that he may get him in the body first before he gets him in the helmet. So this would be one that if we were to err and have called this as targeting, where I think replay could come in and rightfully show that it's not with the crown. His head's in a pretty good upright position, and even though he hits him pretty hard, that's not a foul. That's just a contact, a good football-related hit, and he doesn't, target that defenseless player in that particular play. Another one here, we struggle with this every year. When the quarterback breaks and runs, and I kind of like the NFL rule where once the quarterback begins the slide, you got to stay off of him. But in college, of course, he's still a runner. And what happens here, this defender breaks free to come in, and this defender comes in. And as they aim in their target area, the quarterback drops down through that zone and gets hit in the head. And we had several of these last year, and it's very difficult for us to, I think, to pull the trigger and make this a foul when the defender can't change his direction. He's just going down. He hasn't really led with his head. He's just kind of aiming down to tackle him at the low center of gravity, and as a result, the quarterback slides into the zone and makes that contact, and he does get him on the head. But he's not a defenseless player because he's a runner. He's not a passer or a receiver or a punt returner or anything like that. So as a result, they dive in there, and that's the one that in this case here we don't call a foul. And even though it's a pretty good football-related hit and all, it's not a foul. You get another look at it from a side view here that might help you a little bit. But the reason that contact is high is because the receiver, or I mean the ball carrier, in this case the quarterback, dives down low into the zone, and that's why he gets hit. And we have to work hard at being good enough to tell the difference on those. And in this case here, you'll see where that contact does come. No question, he gets him up in the head. You can see it right in the center right there. But I just think we have to. It's not with the crown; it's more with the side. And these are tough football plays that we're going to have to work extremely hard, all of us, to get consistency on the application of this rule. Here's one up here at the top. Take a look at this. As number 29 gets hit, that is not a foul. So you can see that contact comes in. He's no longer a defenseless player. He's become a runner. Very close to maybe being out of bounds, but he's not obviously out of bounds. So this is a legal hit in every regard. And even though he comes in, he turns, he gets him with his shoulder. Just because they're big hits does not mean that they're fouls. All right, now here's another one here. This one is again another tough one to determine when you look at the contact that occurs there. Is it up high? Here's the best view right here. All right. Defenseless player. Now this contact here, does it come and get him above the shoulders? I believe it does. Even though we have to understand, and I know the NFL has changed their rule, the offensive man drops his head down, and that creates some of what this contact is. But the defender, in his upward thrust there, gets him with the shoulder in the helmet, in the face mask. And this is a tough one for us to get some consistency on. But when you look at this, in the technical application of these rules, that's a foul. It's targeting a defenseless player above the shoulders in the head or neck area, and you make the initial contact. You can see how that helmet rocks back on the receiver after that. Even though he's dropped his head some, we're going to have to get as much information quickly. But when you see that head rock back up like that, it probably is a contact above the shoulders. The question is, does it come from the offensive man? And I'll be curious to see how the NFL washes out their rule with them dropping the head. Here's the example. In this case here, I think there's a pretty good argument that the defensive player drops his head and aims up there. But, again, very difficult. All right, another one up here. Here's where they both lower their head again, and this is where we're going to have to really be students of this rule. In this particular case here, you see, it's the offensive man. He drops his head, and the defensive man drops his. So is this foul created by the offensive man, or would the defense, had he kept his head up, still created a foul? He's not a well, I don't know. This is very close. I think we would still consider him a defenseless player. His foot has just come to the ground right there. He hasn't even quite completed his second step. The foot's just hitting of the second step and the contact has occurred. So, again, our dilemma is, does it come from the offensive man lowering his head, or does the defensive man keep his head in a good upright position? So the language that we're going to talk about, this is another view of it here. What some language that the NCAA has promulgated includes this kind of language for. Now here's a good view. You see right here it comes, and he lowers his own head. So what they're talking about, they're having to say these risk factors indicate less of a foul. If it's a heads-up tackle in which the crown of the helmet does not strike above the shoulders, if it's a wrap-up tackle, if the head is to the side rather than being used to initiate contact, and that incidental helmet contact that is not part of targeting but is due to the player's changing position during the course of play, all of which is allowed and is not foul. So a lot of work to be done in this off season. I wanted to get this one out early. Here's a very unusual play. It was in an FCS level game, and what the talk about players who are obviously out of the play. Quarterback's set here and he's looking down this way, but what we have is two fouls that occur off of the ball. And it's kind of interesting that this is the first one right here. This defender, as the receiver's looking back for the ball, he lowers the boom on him above the shoulders, knocks him out. You can see right there, knocks him and injures him. He goes out of the game on this play, but you see that hit there. That's a player obviously out of the play. You can't target him above the shoulders, or the blind side hit that's been added this year. But then take a look up here. We have the same thing occur up here. Now in this one, I don't think we see much video evidence here to support that it's above the shoulders. But it's just kind of an unusual play to demonstrate two different on the very same play, to have these two actions take place simultaneously. I think the bottom one's a foul. The top one probably is not. And then the last one we'll have here, we talk about where he drops the head. You see the running back lowers his head in this particular case right here. And as the defender's coming in with a pretty good position, the lowering of the head by the running back. And we're going to have to do some work on this, because in this case here, even though the helmets make contact, it's initiated by the runner. I don't think we can tag the defender with the foul on this. He gets hit. When you see the second view of it right here, it's probably with the side of his helmet. He's turning to the side a little bit, trying to get his shoulder in there, and the fact that the side of his helmet hits is not a foul. We're talking about the crown, and you can even see the crown right here. So I think what we're ending up with is the crown not being involved, and that contact is from the running back lowering his head. So an early season look at targeting and initiating contact, trying to get some common language out there and some things that will help us through the year with this very, very difficult but very, very meaningful new addition to the rules regarding player safety and the new disqualification of players. Thank you.